Hi, welcome back to the Dylan Rounds case. Welcome if you're currently here in the live chat. As we do go along, feel free to share your thoughts and opinions as well as reactions, and you can talk about other things in between. Today's video, we're doing a visual map analysis of Dylan Rounds phone pings. Not just the end one, neither the start in between as well, in the correct order of where they occurred. And then trying to understand the story, the patterns and behaviour of, was it Dylan? Was it Brenner? Was it a bit of both? Of who was responsible for those phone pings in that area, right? We will get into it, come up with some ideas, a recreation, if you want to call it that, of how things could have been mapped out, and maybe the transition of when Dylan was attacked and then Jim took over, that sort of thing. Now, if you haven't already, quick important note, there is a previous video which I did cover yesterday, I think it was yesterday, and it was basically looking at all the key new updates and information regarding the case in general from what Candice Curley had to say on the latest East Idaho News channel. It was a good video of East Idaho News. If you want my version, my opinion on that stuff, then I did make a video, and the link will be down below in the comment section, right? As well, another side note, yes, still getting the odd few privacy complaint reports. Who could it be? Could be anyone. Brookie did drop by, left an emoji, like a friendly one, so I appreciate that, that's nice of them. And I'm not talking about Brenner Brookie, the fake account of Brookie. I'm talking about the real Brookie. She left a comment on the last post, so that's good of them to do that. So I appreciate that. So I think it's time we get into Google Earth and load up the project and begin. Okay, so at first glance, it does look a little cluttered, but it is color-coded and I can explain it as we walk through. Okay, so it's under control. We zoom in. As you can see, there's different colored pathways as well. They can be explained shortly. What I've done is the red markers are of the phone pings, right? The blue markers are of key locations to where those phone pings were located at, okay? The coloured pathways and roads are possible routes or routes Dylan Rounds or Brenner could have taken, okay? And I'll explain the colours now. The one down here, which is the orange coloured one, hopefully you're not colourblind, that is to do with Dylan's route to getting to the grain shed, the beginning of the first phone ping, okay? The yellow marker, which is the one here, is the possible route back Dylan took to get back to his camper where the second phone ping was found, okay? And then the green marker, if we skip ahead a little bit, over here, the green line, that's the possible route Brenner took in order to get to the pond, which eventually was the final phone ping and where the phone was found, okay? So that's quite simplistic, hopefully. We're going to try and run it through now, almost like a simulation of how events could have occurred, right? This is not to do with disposing of Dylan. Where did Brenner go? If you want to hear more about that idea, I did do a previous video, right? There will be a link down below in the comment section of the pinned post of where you can find that video. Make sure to watch it after this. So, let's begin. Saturday, May 28th. Dylan wakes up like how he normally would, right? Might get some food briefly, and then he's out. The question, first of all, how did he get to the grain shed? Well, because the first phone ping is at the gate, more than likely Dylan used a vehicle to get there in the first place. For some reason, I sense it's the grain truck, because the grain truck needs to be parked in the grain shed. So that would make sense there. And Dylan, although known for walking back from the grain shed to his farm, his place of living, he doesn't walk there and back. He goes via a vehicle and then walks back from what Candice Cooley has said, what he would normally do. So let's take in mind that pattern of behaviour, right? Gets out his trailer, gets into his grain truck. He doesn't make the phone call yet, okay? And drives down that long road up that way. We'll simulate it now. And on the way up here, which is heading west, eventually getting to almost like a crossroad near to where Sun Tunnels is on the left, right there. Turning right at this point, maybe even cutting across as a shortcut, and then heading north up to the first phone ping, which is here. Now, we just flip the image briefly. This is the first key location, and it's the gate, which you can kind of make out here, that black line going across. Now, as for how it looks visually on the ground level, I'm not quite sure because I've not actually seen the gate properly. But we just imagine that there's a gate there and there's no other way to get around because there's supposed fencing too. That would explain to why Dylan made the phone call at this spot. He might have been originally under the impression of, just a normal day of work, drive down, head on through, there we go, job done, move on. But because of this roadblock, you could call it, obstacle, it kind of stopped him from progressing. And you've got to take in mind, Dylan is probably in a rush, in some kind of hurry, because farming work needs to be done. He's determined, he's focused, he's got a plan, and rain is supposedly coming in. So he needs to protect his seeds as soon as possible, right? So we look at the little key bit of information. It was 6:51 a.m. in the morning, 6:51. Dylan's phone ping was displayed here at the gate. And the first call was to Karen, who is the grandmother of Dylan Rounds, okay? And as we've heard, he just basically says, got to park the grain truck in the grain shed, get on with things, and I'll call you back afterwards when finished. Obviously, he didn't in the end, so something odd happened. After hanging up, he then made the phone call to Brenna. Brenna did not answer. Who knows why Dylan was phoning Brenna? One way of interpreting it, based off the location where the phone ping is, could be to do with the gate. It's locked, or the actual lock of the gate has changed. Maybe Dylan does have a key, a spare one, but it doesn't fit the lock. Possibly Brenna could have been awkward, messing around. Who knows? If Brenna for some reason feels like Dylan was going to take over that land as well in the future, maybe Brenna felt threatened, so he wanted to prevent Dylan from getting it, right? Just these little motives for that behaviour. So, after 6:51, probably around, maybe nearly 7 a.m, it depends how long conversations are, Dylan tried calling Brenna. Brenna did not pick up the phone. If, Brenna said he was in the trailer from Friday to Saturday, he probably would have had his phone nearby to him. I don't know if he had the phone on, but if he did, he obviously ignored it. Not much of a surprise there. So I can imagine that because of that, is there a possibility that Dylan got out of his truck and then walked all the way down to the grain shed? Bit of distance, but manageable to walk down. Is that a possibility? I mean, yes, but what about the phone ping? Wouldn't it be pinging back and forth? If he goes all the way down here and then all the way back and then all the way down, Because the phone call wasn't successful with Brenna, then how would Brenna know about Dylan and the gate being locked? Unless Brenna checked his phone afterwards, heard that Dylan tried calling, then Brenna finally came down to unlock the gate, maybe. The only other way I can think of it is if that didn't happen, Dylan had to walk all the way down to Jim's trailer somewhere around here. Bear in mind, this does not display Brenna's trailer, and it's not that one there. Eventually got to Brenna and said, right, can you unlock the gate, please? And then it happened. That's one way of looking at it. Another way, I guess. So with that, Dylan eventually getting back in his grain truck, let's just say. And then the second official ping appearing right here next to the grain shed, which makes sense. Nothing out of the ordinary, right? Because that's where he's supposed to be going and parking the grain truck inside the shed. Now, there is one question which a couple of people have brought up, and it's to do with why did Dylan take the grain truck back and forth, and why did he take it back to his farm if he's going to be using it again after? And I think people were referring to the seeding situation the day before Dylan went missing at night time on Friday at 11:30 p.m. Now, I can answer that and hopefully it's understandable, right? So with Dylan doing his seeding, supposedly it was at his farm. It would make sense because it's his farm, isn't it? This is his farm. The grain shed is more of a place Dylan sends vehicles to, such as the grain truck, almost like borrowing space in a way, because he doesn't own the grain shed. He doesn't own that land, right? Hopefully that makes sense. But he does own this land and maybe that field if it's one. So it was within this area Dylan was planting his seeds late at night. And that would explain to why the grain truck may be present, let's say. Because a grain truck might have seeds in. Will have seeds in, most likely. And that's probably this part of the stuff that was used for the seeding here. So it makes sense to why Dylan would have had his grain truck parked up where he lives, because it's the same place as where he's doing his seeding, and then getting in that grain truck the following day on Saturday to store it before the seeds get ruined, which would be following that road up to Sun Tunnel, going north, and then obviously getting to the gate, eventually getting around it because he was able to park the grain truck in the shed. And that's why you get the second ping there. So hopefully that clears up that question and confusion. The seeding did not take place at the grain shed because that's not Dylan's land. He doesn't truly own it. Does that make sense? If for whatever reason I am wrong, feel free to correct me down below. But that's what I've heard with time, okay? The way the story has gone. So, with this being the second phone ping and still assuming this is Dylan, it would add up so far because the first phone ping makes sense and is Dylan himself, mainly because that's where he makes the phone call, where his actual voice is captured. The grandmother hears his voice. And then the second phone ping, that's where we start assuming. There isn't full-on proof to say Dylan is directly here. You know what I'm saying? There's no voice, there's no video capture to prove Dylan's here, just his phone ping. And what you've always got to take in mind, you can steal someone's phone, right? And then just because that phone ping of the other person says they're there, don't mean to say that they are actually there. It's only their possession that is present, and someone else may have it in their hands. What I'd say though, up to this point, it's still in Dylan's possession because the location it's at is exactly the location Dylan was heading to. Now, once he's done what needs to be done, grain truck, grain shed, complete, what does he do then? Well, he was supposed to make a call back, I guess. The question, and it's only a small one, but I will put it forwards now if you have any answers. Sure, that's what Dylan had to do, park the grain truck. But was there any other jobs, any other activities, any other farm-related work that needed to be done round the grain shed? Do you know of that? Was there any other additional work Dylan had to do? Or was it just as simple as grain truck, shed, and that was it for the day? Or was it such a thing of going back to his place of living to then carry on with farming? It's just interesting to know, because I know Dylan arguably is a busy individual, hardworking, but was it a day where there wasn't as much to be done, or was it like an every other day? Get on with lots of things, get busy. I'm just trying to think, because if Dylan is taken out, which is likely the case on the day, was it around the time when Dylan was actually actively working? Was it when Dylan may have been confronting an individual? Let's try and look at these phone pings to understand the possibility and outcome. So we assume that the second phone ping, it's Dylan. He's finished what needs to be done. Grain truck now safe. If his grain truck is in the grain shed and that truck was used to get to the shed, he hasn't got any other vehicle to get back, right? Unless he took a ride with Brenner back to his place of living. That could still possibly tie in with the phone call earlier on after 6:51 a.m. But I think that was more to do with the gate. So I'm going to rule that one out for now. But you can acknowledge it if you wish to. So Dylan's on foot, right? Could someone throw in the line of, well, he took his boots off when he finished and put them round the dirt mound? Here. No, it wouldn't really make any sense. I mean, we can get to the boot situation afterwards. This is just the phone ping, right? So after the second phone ping, the third one is all the way down there, back at Dylan's place of living. So this is where it ties in with the whole, did he have other farm work, other jobs to do? Was there other jobs back at his place of living, his farm, for him to go back that way, for the ping to be down there? Or was there another reason? And I've put this yellow line here, as I described earlier on, mainly because it's like a route he would take, from what Candice has said previously. He's been known to walk 5 miles. I can double check the distance for you afterwards. I'll do that because I've not done it for a while. Okay. But yeah, that's the way he could have gone. Also, just before we continue, just a quick shout out. That's about there. About, okay. We saw that on that recent news report to do with the whole Diesel Brothers, the drone, and Candice Cooley. I don't know if it was on Fox 10 News or ABC4 News Utah, but it showed about in the background, and that was just recently. Yet this is in 2019, so it hasn't moved. Well, it might have been moved around a bit, but it still remained near the grain shed, okay? Just wanted to refer back to that. So let's head back to Dylan's farm. 5 miles. He's done it before, no surprise. But afterwards, it will get a little bit more strange, all right? So he finally gets back to his place of living, and this is where the third phone ping is at. Is Dylan still in possession of the phone? Is he still carrying it about? You'd assume so, right? Because Dylan's done what he had to previously do. He's come back here either to rest, to get food, maybe, to get on with more seeding, considering it was done the night before. So there could still be work to have been done. That's what I'm trying to understand. You can leave your thoughts as we go along. So once he's finished, or maybe he has a break, the next phone ping is all the way back up that way, and it's at Jim's trailer. Is that a little bit odd? I don't know. You got to ask yourself now. Originally, he most likely took a truck, probably the grain truck, to the grain shed, and then he walked back because he had no other vehicle to get back. Once he gets here and he's finished and he returns back to Jim's trailer, back at the grain shed, how's he going to get back? Back, forth. You know what I'm saying? It's a bit interesting. Though with Dylan, he does have his Ford F-150, his truck. So That's still available. And if he was to use it, he would most likely use it coming back as well. So he always has at least one vehicle on standby to be able to get back and forth with. That makes sense, right? Is there a possibility that Dylan has already been taken out way back at the second phone ping at the grain shed when he finished? He had a bit of a dispute, or there was an ambush. Brenner took him out. Then Brenner came all the way down to Dylan's place of living to get a hold of his vehicle to use that to then dispose of Dylan. That could be one possibility, as I previously discussed beforehand. The second possibility is Dylan may have walked back, got to here, this area, and Brenner followed, or he was already waiting and then ambushed Dylan and then put him in Dylan's vehicle and then drove west for the next phone ping to emerge. That's another possibility. Now, if it's not them and it's to do with another one, which I'll mention now, Dylan may have decided to return back to Brenner's trailer, visit Brenner's trailer, maybe for some discussion to sort something out, a resolve. Maybe there was an argument earlier on, or maybe it's a follow-up of the ignored phone call regarding the whole gate situation. Who's to say it all kicked off right at the beginning? It might have carried on throughout the day because Dylan was busy and Brenner was being lazy or keeping to himself. The only form of confrontation occurred later in the day, such as now, after the third phone ping. Dylan might get a call back from Brenner. Is that a possibility? Well, let's just try and see it this way from what Candice said when the family cloned Dylan's phone. As for messages and phone calls, nothing out of the ordinary, nothing strange. Okay, so that maybe debunks that. If you've got any additional points, feel free to list. So we ruled that one out, let's just say. And Brennan and Dylan, without phone call or anything like that, just thinks, right, I need to go back to Brenner's trailer because I need to have a word with him regarding the whole gate situation. How dare he do that? Or why has he changed the lock? Oh, it's one of those things where sometimes you might have an argument or falling out with someone, whoever it might be, but because you're busy working, you can't really do much at the time. But once you get a break afterwards, then you might confront them, that type of situations. And obviously with Dylan being busy because of all the farming, you might be limited to when he can talk and confront someone. So I'm going to follow it along that route, that idea. So Dylan gets back into his, now he enters his Ford F-150 truck and he takes the same route all the way up to Sun Tunnel, heading west, right? Apologies about the flickering of the lights on the road. Just thought it'd help so you can guide it better. Obviously, there's cut-off points, up this way. There's alternative ways to go, if that makes sense. I just used one road, right? Gets to this point, then goes north that way. Gate most likely already open by now because of what's happened. Comes all the way back here, right? I don't know what time exactly. And here's the fourth phone ping, as Candy stated, near to Jim's trailer. Now it's that idea of, is Dylan still in possession of the phone? Did Dylan park up outside the trailer, get out, knock on Jim's trailer and confront him? Some kind of argument, some kind of discussion, whatever it may be. Possibly Brenner wasn't in the mood. He might have even been drunk, who knows? And this could well be the point, most likely, when something bad occurred. From the looks of it, when you look at these phone pings. Because the next phone ping is way over here, near the pond. And there's no reason for Dylan to be going to that pond And Brenner himself on that day, on Saturday, at about 2:30 p.m. later on, just after, Brenner did say he went to that pond before going on to a barbecue. So you know where it ties in. Before we get to that point, with the fourth phone ping, let's just assume this is when it happens. Dylan is hurt, Dylan is ambushed, attacked, whatever it may be. And with Dylan's vehicle being on standby, literally there, already unlocked, most likely with the keys in the ignition, because Dylan was only stopping by temporarily, Brenner drags Dylan's body or carries it, puts it in the truck or the back of the truck, gets in, and then drives off. But which route? Well, I've always referred to coming up this way near the wash, turning left and heading all the way down there to the wash. But from what Candice Cooley said, the route of the phone or the phone ping was along the back end, the back way, which I assume is the back dirt road. Now, I don't know exactly where that is, but if I had to guess roughly, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is it somewhere over this way where the green line is? If I just press north, there we go, we're facing north now. You've got Brenner's trailer here, somewhere roughly, and then you've got this back end road. As you can see, this one here. Back end road. I think it also goes on to the brass shed at some point, or it might be just before that. Yeah, there you go. There's the bra shed, right there. Turning left, getting onto this road. As you saw, I just put a question mark, back road. Let me know if this is right or wrong. This is just one of the potential routes Brenner could have took when driving Dylan's vehicle and also transporting Dylan at the same time, because the phone ping is still on Dylan, supposedly speaking, or it's in Brenner's possession. Because what you got to understand is, was Brenner disposing of the phone the same time Dylan was in the truck, unconscious, not alive, or was Brenner burying Dylan at the grain shed near the land there, and then realised the phone was on Dylan, took it out of his pocket, so obviously no one would find Dylan, because if the final ping was at a certain spot and Dylan was in possession of that phone and then he was buried, if anyone came along and looked at that phone ping, they'll think, right, it's here, dig up the ground, oh, we found Dylan, like that. It'd be too easy, right? Arguably speaking. So possibly Brenner took the phone out of Dylan's pocket, wherever it was, disposed of Dylan, and then took the phone on a journey down the back roads, as described here, and going on to Lucin Pond. Because if you start moving the phone about in all different areas, people are either going to assume Dylan is visiting these places, or the phone is in Dylan's possession whilst he's been taken somewhere, even if he might be dead, because the killer might not know about the phone being in the pocket. So that's how family, friends could react. So wherever they see the final ping, they may assume that's where Dylan is at. But if Dylan has been disposed of earlier on, and then the phone was taken off and sent around on a wild goose chase, you see what it causes? Misdirection and confusion. So there's different ways. And if not that, then the other possibility is Dylan is in the truck as Brenner is driving, and at some point Brenner realises about the phone and thinks, right, I'll take a turn off here, drive down to the pond area. There's a parking space there, enough space to and then goes to the pond and drops the phone in because that's where the phone was found, hence the final phone ping. Now, there has been some talks where people said, oh, this is where Dylan is at, they need to dig it up and stuff. And it's like, from what Candice Cooley has said, the pond is not deep, it's quite shallow. And divers did go in and did not find any remains or anything at all. But that's where the arguably contradiction comes in, because yeah, that's what Candice said back then. Divers went, explored the pond, found nothing. Well, if you found nothing, then why did they find a phone? I assume it's all to do with Candice wasn't allowed to talk about it at the time, so she had to keep it a secret. But I can understand a general everyday human who, picks up or thinks that Candice has lied, then there could also be lying about not finding anything whatsoever, and there might be something hidden. So you see what I'm saying? But I guess if they're using that drone right now within the area, if they do fly it over the pond, which you'd hope so, they would find something that way. But then again, hold on a minute, it's to do with soil disturbance, right? So that's like to do with the ground. What happens if you've got water, if you've got a hole and it's filled with water, and underneath that water, you've got the ground itself, silt, dirt, mud, whatever it may be, clay, and it was disturbed previously and then it was filled up with water. Or maybe it all happened at the same time, water was already in. Does the drone still pick up the soil disturbance or not? I don't know how it quite penetrates. But yeah, that's the final phone ping. And then it's like, shit, well, what happens then? Well, it's up to one's interpretation, right? And as I said, I did do a previous video describing what happened after the pond, what happened after the phone was dumped here. And if you want to check it out, as said, in the comments section, there is a link provided in the pinned section for you to watch. But before we do that, we need to refer back to something pretty important, okay? And no one has really mentioned it in terms of this specificness and location, okay? I think mainly only me has. So we're just going to rewind back to Dylan's place of living, just briefly, down here. So, Dylan's Ford F-150, when the family eventually came on the 30th, and as the investigation followed after that, Dylan's Ford F-150 was parked up here, so it was returned back, and it did have mud on. An attempt was made to clean it, and evidence was removed, but the wheel, the track mark underneath the wheel, where mud can collect, that wasn't cleaned. It's trying to understand what would have caused such a mess. You got to think of the ground, the texture, the weather, the conditions of the terrain, and all of that. Candice said it was roughly March when it last rained. So Dylan went missing May, so it's going to be fairly dry. It's a hot place already. It's quite dry. It's a desert terrain, and there's not much water. It's almost like a drought. The ground goes harder. There's less chances of footprints being left behind, right? And if you've got a vehicle driving through the terrain on a dirt road or even off-road, it will get dusty, but not that muddy, right? You're not going to get the true splatter marks and everything. It's mainly going to be dust, So how could mud of a certain level get onto the vehicle, and especially underneath the wheels? Candice briefly talks about the wash. I'm going to follow on from that, okay? So remember that back road we were referring to? The one Brenner mainly only takes. Okay, so he followed it all the way up to the pond. But just before the pond, it actually dips down, and I will get onto ground level almost. Almost like that. Driving on the dirt road, and do you see how it dips? I'll just rotate it there. can you see the gradient? It dips down and goes back up. And I did mention in the past, if you had heavy rainfall and this wash area fills up, does that road become inaccessible, blocked off, flooded? Possibility. It does connect on to the wash, which goes all the way in and out. Can you see? All the way in and out. The one Candice was referring to, the one Tyne Lance have investigated, the one the mob crew flew over with the drone and found those excavation tracks, which turned out to be search and rescue. You understand? Yeah? That wash. Possibility that Dylan is within it. You never know. But if we just put that part aside, this wash can be linked and associated with Dylan's vehicle getting muddy. This is possibly the location here to where it occurred. Because realistically, you're not just going to drive right into a wash, because there is a bit of a drop. You know, when you look over here, it does drop down. And if you drove a vehicle down into it, you're going to crash, you're going to smash. It's going to be very impractical. Just like with the railroad tracks, you're not going to drive over them like this, are you? Because there's a big slope and you're going to go over the tracks, it might damage the vehicle. Instead, you look for a point where there's a crossing, right? And where's there a crossing? Over here. This spot is intended for cars and vehicles to drive over, as well as trucks. So when it comes to the wash, you need a road which drops down into it. And this is the main spot, and it also is linked with the back road and the back route, as you see, the one only Brenner takes. So as he drives down into this wash, although there's not really been any rain in recent time and it's very dry, because this is a wash, it might be slightly shaded, it's more moist, it's more wet, it's just wet compared to the normal land surrounding it, because this area is a wash in which water collects. And, you know, even when it can dry up, the ground can still be a bit saturated, or even just about underneath where the water might be stored, seeps through. You get what I'm saying? There's more chances of this area being wet or damp compared to, let's say, Dylan's land, where it's all flat and exposed directly to the sun. There's no puddles or washes where water will collect, but this is where water can collect. So as Brenner possibly is driving Dylan's truck, possibly drops down on that road into the wash area, I don't know if the vehicle gets stuck. He does have it set to all-wheel drive, so maybe that's used to be able to force it out if it gets stuck. Could be a little bit wet, as if the wheels are spinning slightly, it could cause a bit of splashing, right? Eventually comes over, gets out, parks, disposes of the phone, and then whatever happens after that. But I'm just thinking, and you can like leave your thoughts in the chat, or I can do a poll right now. Do you think this is the exact area to where Brenner got Dylan's vehicle very muddy, and that's why the wheel arch and stuff got muddy and wasn't cleaned because of it? Do you think this is the area? If not, do you think just the wash in general, somewhere else, further up, further down the wash, is where the vehicle went? Hell, do you think that maybe Brenner drove the vehicle through the wash? I mean, as long as there's no water there, you can. Because we've seen the track marks of the vehicles by like the search and rescue going through it. I know Candy said something about track marks, possibly of Dylan's, previously in the wash, but I don't know exactly where. She means here, where I'm talking about with the green line, or further on east. Either way, it just seems to be this is some kind of potential hotspot, right? So let's just zoom out. Hopefully that made sense. I just wanted to map out every phone ping, because here's the thing. In the past, a lot of people were referring to the final ping and that was it. Not the first one, the mid one, you know. This kind of plays it all out. And when you look at the markers, it's kind of uniformed in a way. They're all at key locations, right? Dylan's place of living, grain shed, Jim's trailer, and the pond. And they arguably all follow a certain order, and arguably all follow, up to a certain point, what Dylan would be doing, getting on with stuff, up to a point where Brenner takes over, possibly, or another suspect. Do you see? Now, we'll just do a quick distance check, I guess. Let's do it from here, right? It's just a rough one. Hopefully it works. Say it to miles. Boom. We'll check the mileage from Dylan's place of living to the grain shed. Well, up to the gate, from Dylan's place of living up to the gate, it's roughly 6 miles, which isn't that bad. If you skip past that and go directly to the grain shed, it's about 6.74 miles. Okay? Now, if we move on to the next one, which was grain shed to Dylan's place of living, it should be 5 miles. Roughly, yeah, it's roughly about 5 miles. So that checks out. So, okay. In terms of distance, it's reasonable. Both walking and driving, obviously. So most likely the first distance, 6 point whatever miles to the gate, and then up to roughly 7 miles in total to the grain shed. By vehicle, that's nothing. That really is nothing. It wouldn't take long at all. And then walking back 5 miles roughly, because Dylan's used to doing that isn't much to him. And then it would be another 7 miles if Dylan was to go in his F-150 and drive all the way back to Jim's trailer. Maybe slightly less in mileage because it's a bit before the grain shed. So it's not extreme distance, but there's a lot of back and forth, isn't there, right? Now, let's just check the distance, the final one, of the possible back route. Now, we'll just follow the actual road itself. I guess it also depends if Brenner could be bothered. Now, there is a turn-off point here. Maybe he didn't go through the gate to make it look less suspicious. I don't know. Went this way. Right. Follow the green line. This is the back route, supposedly. I might be wrong. I'm just following these track marks where they previously were used, so I assume it links on. Okay. And then follow it up here. Get into the pond area. I'll zoom out a bit because it takes longer if you zoom in. It's a bit weird. It's like an illusion in a way. Okay. There. And then roughly there, and potentially park up. If you want to round it up, kind of like 5 miles again. Interesting how from location to location, it's roughly about 5 to 6 miles between each spot. So, kind of spaced out equally, which is a bit odd, but there you go. So you get the idea of distance, nothing extreme, although it's very back and forth, it's not too much distance. And for most part of it, whether it's Dylan, Brenner, or both combined, most of the journeys taken would have been in some vehicle, right? But I do feel Dylan did walk back for the third phone ping. You can leave your thoughts down below if you think different. Right, so hopefully that visual interpretation was helpful to you, I hope. And yes, I have magically changed clothes as well. Amazing, as you can see. You know, how did that happen? I don't know, but should I reveal? Yeah, you want to see this? Oh, I don't know. Maybe the zip is a bit too shy. Should I show you? Should I not? Oh, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't worry, I will. I'll unzip very, very slowly. Okay. You can see the movement, yeah. I'm slowly exposing. There you go. There you go. Yes! There you go. See, this is the thing. There's no need for worry or concerns about dodgy flashing images popping up on the screen. Arguably that may occur in Jim Terry's streams, from what some people have said. It's all okay. So hopefully no one had a bit of a heart attack then. There's no need to worry, no need to panic, right? So this video, main aim of it, was to be able to pinpoint all the ping locations so people can refer back to it in the future for whatever reason. It's there, it's on screen. Instead of having to listen to someone sat here talking all the time, you can just look at a map and see all the pinpoints and that's it. I think that's more time efficient, don't you? And we can actually do it again, not for phone pings, but for other locations and activity associated with certain people, like Chase Venstra with his alibi mentioned by Candice Cooley. We can take a look at that. And then I think there's like another and a third one to do, but we'll follow it in a certain order, which is appropriate, okay? And then see where things go from there, because ultimately it's like one of those things within the case. I've got my own videos to be doing, you know, my own stuff, my own methods, you know, and this is like one of them. But then in between, you will get proper, true news updates, which needs to be covered, mentioned, talked about. And, you know, the flow of this case has been somewhat in sync. Times where things go quiet, flat, dead. I do my own videos, do my own research in certain ways, just to keep the noise and keep the case alive as best as I can. And then when the real important stuff comes in from a news channel or one of the interviews, one of the news channel interviews, or one of the YouTubers doing it, or even on the Facebook post, then I can start looking at that and cover that important stuff. And it may just happen to tie in with the next video, or it may reinforce or strengthen a previous unique video of mine. So it does work out, which is good. Now, who knows how long it will go on for, obviously, because I don't know if any of you think this, but do you feel that the case is coming to an end, possibly? You think that's the case? I'd say it feels like there's probably still quite a few twists and turns, because when it feels like progression is made or something has come about, there's like a negative that follows afterwards. And those negatives tend to be, oh, the date changing or the bits of information changing. Like, this is like a small scale one, but it falls in line with all the other multiple small scale changes, like with the bin bags. People were saying that Brenner took 8 bin bags out of the grain shed, but from what I heard in the Candice interview on the East Idaho News Channel, it was only 4 bin bags. Now, 4 and 8, does it really matter? I mean, kind of. If she said like 4 and then another day she said 5, maybe 6, the numbers are closer to each other. But 4 and then 8, double that. Yeah, a bit of a difference to be making the error. But if you're on different news channels, which I guess she was, then you might say things different. But that's the thing, if you don't fully stick to the story, then to some people it becomes less believable. I know you can only say and do so much. You can't be perfect when it comes to recalling things, especially when you're the main one caught up in it all. There's only so much you can do, I know. You've always got to take that into mind. And yeah, that's really it. Is there anything else to talk about? I know you had the Shack lady doing that live stream with the other individuals, Salty Pancakes, Mr. X, Jim Terry, and then some other individuals coming in along the way, talking about, I guess, the drama, trying to work together. I've heard it before. It has been attempted before in a previous stream, and especially with the time when it came to Ty Corbin, Pancakes, when they had their little truce. Didn't last long, did it? So will it work this time? Probably not. Is it okay temporarily? Yes. But will it last? Probably not. It'll be one of those things where if the Dylan Rounds case continues and there's still coverage on it and there's still developments and people being involved, that's probably what will cause the differences, which will cause the conflict because people think differently. People have different methods to working in that case. If it goes quiet and the likes of Pancakes and Jim Terry move on to another case, which I think is happening, then you're probably not going to get the concentrated tension as what we've previously seen because they're doing something else. So when any drama does show up, it won't be directly associated with Dylan. But who knows what could happen. Maybe a case gets solved or it comes to a dead end, return back to the Dylan Rounds one. Bit of a pinball effect, back, forth, almost like the phone pings in a way. I do sense that there could be backstabbing at any point, any time with certain people, who knows. I mean, like when it comes to insulting, this is the difference between the Kenny Veach case and some individuals within it, and then the Dylan Rounds case. You got someone like Jay Silverheels in the Kenny Veach case. He'll call you an idiot. He'll say you're insane, that you need locking up, that, we're going to send nuclear missiles to the UK. That type of stuff. And it's funny because he doesn't always mean it. And then other times he says the complete opposite. He says, wow, you're great. You're a genius. Your IQ is beyond measure. Wow, you're doing really well. That was a great analysis. It's that back and forth. And you get to that point where you just take it very loosely. You don't take it too serious, right? Some people didn't quite understand it and got into a bit of a hissy fit, got the pants in a twist, started whinging and whining, maybe because the pants were a bit too tight around the person. Who knows, that's questionable. But you get what I'm saying. With the Dylan Rounds case, there's more criticism, there's more insults, there's more, I don't know about more, I've not seen it myself, but in the air, more threats, calling people out, swearing, this and that. Swearing isn't a problem, but I'm just saying in terms of all these insults and everything back and forth, there's more of that happening compared to the Kenny Veach case. And it's more genuine in this case than the Kenny Veach one. Does that make sense? But I'm only just using a case study of Jay Silverheels, so it can't really be a full representation of most humans, right? Because of also the age as well. But when it comes to the Dylan Rounds one, when you hear threats or when you hear insults, it's taken more serious, right? Because it is meant with more passion behind it towards certain people. And then at a later point, or even a day later, people might be all friendly and nice to each other or communicative, and it's like, yeah, but you just said all that stuff to them behind their backs on another stream, and now you've come over to this stream talking directly to them, speaking all calm and neutral, and it's like, does that other person know what you said to them behind their back? I mean, it's like what about when the Shack lady was bringing Pancakes onto the panel, and then some other people, vice versa. And then once the Shack lady left in a different live stream, Pancakes was calling her out, saying she's a desperate individual, desperate for attention, wants to get all over the place and raise her voice, etc., etc. And then just recently, it's like they're both talking to each other fairly calmly. And it's like, well, that's very sudden. And I know people can throw in the typical, even if they put on the NHS style tone of, we're all humans, we all take things in our stride, we all make mistakes, but we all learn from it. Oh, yeah. Cut that fucking shit, man. We're not sticking to that bullshit line always. It doesn't always apply. And speaking of adults, if that is the case, well, they're still behaving like children at times, so that rules that point out. It's that abruptness, sharpness, just like being stabbed in the back. It's the same thing, visual symbolism, microcosm of what's happened, right? The sharpness of certain words and lines exchanged, and then the sharp abruptness of that being dispersed, dispelled, and now suddenly talking neutral or maybe nice all of a sudden, on a different stream with the same people. And it's like, well, that was sudden. When you get that sharp, sudden change in a person's behaviour, 1 minute they're happy, next minute they might be very sharp, demanding, questioning this and that, and it's a bit too much. And because it's back forth, so sudden, just like with these insults, the drama, and then the peace treaty, and then possibly the drama, there's a lack of stability. And there's a lack of stability, there might be a lack of trust and lack of reasoning. So it's not practical, right? The whole, we can all get together and be unstoppable, arguably could be true and could happen. But even if that couldn't happen, it's not like, oh, we got to hold hands, form daisy chains, and then sing Ring a Ring a Roses, right? Maybe Chase Venstra does that in his spare time, but maybe it doesn't happen within the Dylan Brown's case. Arguably, a more effective, less negative style would be the Shack Lady does her live streams, as she has been, inviting people on, trying to form that balance as well as range of conversations, because she's good at doing that. She can do it for 11 hours. She can do it for 12 hours. The Shack Lady has stamina. She can go on all night. The likes of Salty Pancakes, hybrid, as said, he does his live streams. He does his bits of exploration, even though it could be questionable at times. He can go off and do his own thing. And so can the Shack Lady. Jim Tay, he can do his own thing as well, because that's what he does. Gets in there, even if people don't like his style. You know, if people are separated, there's going to be less conflict, right? It's when you get all together. That's why it seems to blow up, because of different personalities. Now, arguably, the one way which could still cause tension and problems, even if when people, despite being in different countries, not different countries, different states, and separated apart in that sense, there can still be tension and conflict if someone finds something which ties in with another content creator, YouTuber, investigator, which has derailed one's own investigation. If things start crossing over, that could cause problems. Like, best example I can give, if you've got certain content creators just visually talking about the case, covering information, doing their own thing, and then someone like Salty Pancakes doing his own thing, like how he's done previously before all the panel stuff, okay? Pancakes may go out somewhere, like Chase Venstra's homestead, may plant something, bury an item, stage something, let's just say. Content creator, another one, or another investigator comes along, sees that footage, hears about it in some way, boots on ground or not, and then covers it and applies it to the story in the case of Dylan. At some point, maybe it's Candice, maybe it's the Ellie, come out and say, no, that isn't true. That's been put there recently. And then eventually it tracks back to Pancakes. And then all the people that were caught up in that false sense of information get frustrated at someone like Pancakes. And then even though they're spread apart and not in the same chat, they can still argue between each other, channel versus channel. So I think realistically, it cannot go completely. And I'm not talking about the whole, you can't please everyone. I'm not talking about that overused line. I'm just simply saying that even with distance, words can be exchanged. Even with distance and people doing their own things, paths cross at a certain point down the line, as that example was demonstrated just then. So you can't really completely get rid of it, but you can reduce it, damage limitation, right? Now, I'm not a mediator. I'm not a mediator, simple as. As if I'm a mediator, man. Do I look like a mediator? I'm not even medium. I'm extra large. Oh shit, that was an on the spot line. 6'2", large. How do I save myself now from sounding very weird? I can't check my top. I'm gonna check the tag. My top is a large 44, 45 inch chest. So it's a large t-shirt. Right, forget what I'm saying. I'm just trying to get rid of that dodgy line. Fuck's sake, why did I just say that then? That was just so stupid. Right, so ultimately, hopefully the phone ping visual interpretation of it was useful, right? We can refer back to it in the future if necessary. It kind of gives an idea of where people were at certain points in time. In the future, if possible, if we get a hold of more people, more individuals of where they were at certain times, I can pinpoint it all on one big map. And then we can understand the distance of certain locations, how long it takes to get from one place to another. Even if someone is in a different area, they might have snuck in or passed by along the way throughout a journey. That type of stuff, right? I think as for Venstra, doesn't quite apply with the Dunn's Grangeshed, but more sense can be made of that when I do the visual interpretation, and it will be a little bit dodgy, but it's more to do with, being serious as well. Okay, so I'll stop there. I've talked enough. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. That's it. Goodbye.